time for questions from all of you. We'll take them in groups of 3. 1. Anyone else right now? Don't be shy. Way in the back there, 2. And 3. Great. We have a roving mic somewhere, so let's bring it over to this side first.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, and also thank for our panelists for providing the amazing idea. My question is about the SDGs, because SDG is not a short vision goal. It involves our goals between 2016 to 2030s. So my question is, what do you guys think about the reciprocity on investing on your future compared to what we have seen now? Because I came from California, and my foundation is called Human Heritage Project. My foundation is focused on educating the public about the good attribution of mankind and from generation to generation. And I came up with the idea that during Father's Days, we want to provide a sponsor for the foster kids to go to, for example, amusement park to enjoy a day of happiness, and meanwhile, tell them to write a thank you letter to actually senior housing, to the elders, which actually lost part of their life regarding to the young generation. So we want to bring in the gap between different generations. And my thought is, because as Sean said, it's important to establish a role models. And to me, I think the best role model is themselves, because when themselves grown up, 16 years later, they become their own role model of life, and they be able to spread out the positive energy to the communities. So my question is, how important on that in terms of replicability of a good project?
We're going to take him in groups. Okay. Where was the other question?
Everyone that spoke said a personal experience they had that influenced them to support things that help the environment. I was wondering what influenced you the most to stop using plastics when you realized it was supporting industries really good.
So I know there's been a lot of controversy about the company Uber because people are convinced that they're taking jobs from cabs. So my question is, do you think people are more likely to share the economy and not own cars if they know that they'll be successful in getting a cab by being able to book it?
If the panel would like to begin.
I'm happy to weigh in on a few. First of all, I love the idea of your project. It has several of the features that we've heard about from this group. I think intergenerational discussions are really powerful for role modeling, and role modeling both ways. And I have this dream of a program that actually takes the parents out of the equation and has grandparents with grandchildren, and encouraging that relationship, because I think there's some real power that happens when we look at that. And clearly the reciprocity, the connectivity you get when investing in happiness in a child can have long-term benefits. I'm a firm believer that if you fall in love with a caring issue early in your life, it changes the way you do everything else. I mean, many of us love environment because we remember when we first touched dirty water, where we first saw a tadpole, when we went climbing a mountain with our school class. So when you can create those opportunities, you can help people fall in love like you did. Now we have an Uber expert here, but I'm going to just weigh in because it's such a fascinating question. The sharing economy is changing the world, which means it's changing the world. So certain things will always get struck. And there will be collateral damage in certain industry sectors. It's really important that we have collateral damage in certain industry sectors, because certain industries are not really helping us. I'm quite happy if the oil industry has some significant problems. That's something I can live with. And I think that the tensions that groups are having by housing, by Airbnb, etc., will create kickbacks. I don't know if you all know, but just in the last 2 weeks, Airbnb, or the city of New York has banned Airbnb hosts like myself from renting our apartment if you rent your whole apartment at one time. And so there's a lobby, mostly the hotel lobby, is kicked back against the sharing economy. And we're going to see these tensions play out again and again and again. And it's how each of us, the calls we make, the response we do as community members, that shift legislation, that shift the norms, so that the sharing economy can win and the detrimental economies can lose.
I want to jump in and answer to your question. I do believe that individual actions are very important, because what we are now is the result of what we do in our everyday. I also believe that it's very important to start getting engaged in these issues at a very young age, because these issues are affecting all generations, and also because then these issues will become a social value. So instead of being here talking about why it's important to talk about sustainability, then we'll be gathering to talk about how we are going to tackle those problems. So that's why I think that's very important.
So it's been really incredible to witness what has happened in the sharing economy over the past 6 years, and things have happened a lot quicker than what I've expected. And so your question about Uber is a good question, because Uber, everyone is Ubering. Everyone, like even my parents are using the word Uber, which is really strange because they can't use a computer properly. But there's a responsibility, I think, when things grow, to also keep an eye out on things, to make sure that things, if there's more cars on the road, from Ubers, like for government, for the companies to keep check on that. But right now, I think a lot of governments are maybe a little scared of this concept or a little confused. And I want to go back to an example in the 17th century when in England, coffee houses opened for the first time. And so for the first time, people were allowed to gather together of all social standings in a place, and they talked about a lot of things. They talked about government, they talked about philosophy, they talked about mathematics. And the king back then wanted to shut these coffee houses down because people in these coffee houses were talking about the government. And now we see a Starbucks around every corner. So that didn't work back then. So we're facing the same thing with the sharing economy now. There's people who are a little scared of it or uncertain of it, or like it's changing, it's really disrupting certain industries. But I think in the long run, it makes sense. It makes things more efficient. Consumers like it. There's a lot of innovation in the space. So hopefully we'll ease out these teething problems and be able to share more in the future.
Plastic question, right? So if I just want to clarify, awesome person that asked question. You were asking why I stopped using plastic? Is that what it was? What brought me to not use plastic? Okay, so my junior year of college, I saw the documentary Gasland. Has anyone seen that documentary? Has anyone not seen that documentary? Oh my God, it's so good. You have to see it. So it was made by this director, Josh Fox, and it basically talks about the human rights and environmental impacts of hydrofracking, which, if you don't know what fracking is, it's the extraction of gas in shale rock formations that uses millions of gallons of water, over 600 proprietary or undisclosed chemicals, lots of pressure, and has been linked to things like methane contamination of water, where people can actually set their tap water on fire, as well as the tainting or toxifying of water systems based on those 600 chemicals that are put into the solution that they inject into the shale rock at high pressure. So when I learned about that, I was like, okay, this is pretty awful stuff that we're doing, this whole insane process to get gas. But on top of that, people's human rights issues were violated, in the sense that oil and gas industries would come in, ask to rent property from people, basically rape it of all the gas that they had, and then leave, leaving them with contaminated water and essentially valueless property. So those were the reasons that I started protesting against the oil and gas industry. When I learned more about this industry, I learned about just how energy intensive and water intensive the plastics and oil industry really was. Besides millions of gallons of water, there's so much gasoline that's actually used in the process of making more gasoline and plastic products, because you have to, ship trucks and trucks and trucks of oil and chemicals and water. And then when you use plastics, what happens with plastic is a lot of the time people just throw it away and it'll end up in the landfill. So that's just taking up physical environment. But a lot of the time that plastic and the little nurdles that are used to make plastic products, they're molded into plastic products, end up in places like our oceans. And what happens in our oceans is that a lot of things. Well, animals mistake plastic as food very often, and they'll eat that plastic. So besides killing the animals, that problem makes its way back to us. And how it does that is plastics in the ocean can be up to 1 million times more toxic than the water around them. So you have a little piece of plastic that's heavily contaminated with contaminants that are in our ocean, things like pharmaceuticals. Fish will eat them, and this thing called biomagnification happens. So little fish eat a piece of plastic, and a bunch of little fish eat plastic. Then bigger fish eat those little fish, and then bigger fish eat those fish, and the concentration of contaminants builds up into these big fish that we as people eat. So by putting plastic into the ocean, we're feeding fish plastic that ends up on our plates. So we're contaminating ourselves. On top of that, just plastics in the ocean end up disrupting natural habitats. They trap really beautiful animals like whales and kill them and suffocate them. If you've seen pictures of albatross that are dead on beaches with plastic in their stomachs. I mean, the process of making plastic, using plastic, disposing of plastic, and yes, even recycling plastic is incredibly economically destructive, environmentally destructive, energy inefficient, and wasteful. So for me, it's a no-brainer not to use plastic. Why would I ever use this? And what I found through living this lifestyle is that there are very, very simple, accessible, affordable options to saying no to single-use disposables altogether, which I list on my blog because I believe it's really simple for all of us as individuals to make changes to reduce our waste and not have to ask companies like the oil and gas corporations to shut down or change their ways. We don't even have to support them in the first place. We can do little things in our own life every day to align with the values that we have. Instead of making other people change, we change ourselves.
That's great. That's really good. I felt like I was in the audience for a while listening to you. We're going to talk. I wanted to answer a part of his question that talked about how do you duplicate some of the SDGs. And the SDGs, before a couple months ago, I knew about them, but I didn't really understand them. So I went to an event, a Global Youth Summit at the United Nations in New York, and it just really made sense to me. There are a lot of SDGs. Somebody asked a great question, do I just do a little bit of each one, or do I just focus on one and do that, go all the way? All the above. You got to find what's right for you. You have to figure out how you can make the biggest difference. And I think value is the key to duplicating the SDGs. With the environmental SDG, the one on climate change, global warming, that's the one I resonate with just because of what I dealt with my children, with my kids, and when I understood that it's such a big issue and no one really in the football or professional football arena is tackling that. I'm like, I can make some headway here. I'm going to go this route. But if you don't allow people, especially youth, to understand why the SDGs are important to them, why and how it affects them, and make that direct link. Like when you talked about the small fish, eating the little fish, the big fish, and the bigger fish, the big fish, ends up on your plate, it's like light bulb moment. Eureka. Oh my gosh. Like I don't want to use plastic anymore. And so you made a connection. We have to make the connection with every single SDG to the people who aren't in this room. Because Sean made a great point about we're preaching to the choir. Everyone here just nods their head. It feels great. You know, I even have a little young lady over here just nod her head, and she makes me feel good. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting her, getting to her. But she already knows this. She already understands this. She gets it. Most people here, I'm not converting. We're not converting. It's about what do we do when we leave here? What do we do when we get this knowledge? When I first started on my journey into the green space, I ran into Ted Turner and his daughter, Laura Turner Seidel, and the Captain Planet Foundation in Atlanta, and they kind of took me underneath their wing because they realized that I wanted to learn, they wanted to teach me, they saw that I could be a huge addition to this space, and I'm like, I want to be able to do more together than I could by myself. But myself and my wife talk about it all the time. We went to meetings where we went to webinars, we went to seminars, we went to sessions and penthouse meetings and small groups, and it was constantly just talking to ourselves and rallying each other up and getting each other riled up about what we're going to do. But the most important thing is to do it. The most important is to do it, and don't worry about doing it by yourself. It's worry about collaborating with other people who can help you do it. Like, Sean made another great point about my comic book. I had a great idea. I wanted to do something, but I couldn't find an illustrator without him. I couldn't get the ideas down without him. I couldn't distribute it without UNICEF, United Nations. We're actually still looking for a corporate sponsor, so anybody wants to do that, come find me later. But just try to find ways to collaborate. All these things just involve you opening your mouth, being passionate, be excited about making something happen. Not talking about making something happen, about making something happen. So you'll duplicate the SDGs if you get that connection to occur between yourself and another individual, you collaborate and you make something happen.
Thank you so much. Before I take the next round of questions, I just wanted to jump in on a few of the things. One, to your point about the intergenerational. The president of the General Assembly for this year, the ambassador from Fiji, Peter Thompson, when he talks about the SDGs, and he really talks about them in an interesting, emotional way, particularly for a UN official, and he talks about it in terms of his grandchildren, and that this is an existential issue for his grandchildren. And he hammers that home every single day, no matter what audience, and he's meeting with heads of state at all time. This is about our children, our grandchildren, my children, your children. And I think that's what really makes a connection. And obviously, I mean, even hearing from Ovi, what really pushed the needle for him was when his children had issues about breathing in the air in the community that he lived in. So I think if we're able to connect in that very emotional way about this is about our children, the people that we love, we can bridge that intergenerational gap. The other point I wanted to make is about Uber, and this is not related to my work, but I love Uber. I was an early adopter with Uber, and I've written to Uber on several occasions because I noticed that more and more the cars that they were adding were hybrid cars or more green cars. And I said to them, why don't you launch Uber Green? If I had a chance to take an Uber X or an SUV, I would pick the green car every time. And why don't you incentivize your drivers by helping to get better leases for them or give them a bit more commission because they're driving green? And then on the government side, why don't we tax incentivize that? I mean, we can make this a win-win economically while at the same time getting green. And then I'm here just thinking I'm going to be late for work. Let me pick my Uber, and it's just a question of pressing a different button. There are really easy things that we could do to move the needle on that. So that's my thing about Uber. I have not heard back from their CEO, and I've written to him twice, but maybe my second thing to do will be to write a third time and say, you need to launch Uber Green. Get with it. So anyway, let's take one more round of questions, and then we'll adjourn to the other side so that you can all talk with each other.
I wanted to know how each one of you measures your impact of what you're trying to do. And I see that, I'm reading a lot about how you can create an impact, and awareness is a big factor that comes into play. But how much of that actually makes a difference? I'd really like to know about that.
Hi, Hi. So I was wondering, since you all support the sharing economy and especially Lauren by having a zero waste lifestyle, do you support like the tiny house movement? And does that have anything to do with being sustainable?
First, thank you all for your wonderful speech. And my name is Leia. I'm a first-year Master of Environment Management in School of Forestry and Environmentals in Yale University. I have two questions. My first question is that since SDG is more universal goals, so what's your opinion like? How could we get more Asian countries get involved in this topic? And my second question is that I want to know, like, what's your advice? How could we make transformative redesign especially for the rural communities, especially when they do not have as many resources as we have? And how could they to get involved in SDG goals? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your incredible speeches. My name is Lala Kamakura. I'm an NGO youth representative from Fordham University. My question here today would be that this topic of climate change is very intimidating for many people. And I believe that a lot of youth, a lot of people feel that they can't make a huge impact on this issue. So my question would be, how could we convince people and encourage people to take on small actions, whether it's in universities or whether it's in society? How can we encourage people to make a small difference in their lifestyle? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your questions. I think that maybe I don't have like an accurate way to measure my impact, but as a designer, I believe that I'm doing an impact when I'm doing a project or a prototype that engages with people and that opens up conversations that we didn't have before, and that also creates a point of negotiation from the different groups of people that are involved in the issue. So that's when I see that my design work is creating an impact in the world. I forgot the second question. Yeah.
Tiny homes,
I
communities, and encourage other people to make a difference. On it.
Okay.
Don't feel like you have to answer every question. Different people
I'm
can
not-
fill in on what they
yeah,
know
I'm
most
sorry,
about.
Yeah, I'm not feeling very like an expert in that topic. Yeah, and the other question was about the rural areas, and that's also a question that concerns me. And because, well, I'm from Mexico, and there are a lot of rural areas there, and I've been exposed to those areas, and I'm seeing how they are affected by how people is moving to big cities, no? And I do believe that as we think in a systemic way, we have to think about also to include other modes of living that includes the rural areas. And as my own perspective and as a designer, I do believe also that sometimes people that live in cities, we believe that maybe we know more, or that we know the ways to solve their problems. But I think that we also have to learn from them, because there's a lot of knowledge that we can take from them. And the other question.
It was about how we can convince people that our small actions are contributing to like a bigger impact.
Okay, well, I do that in my everyday work by using prototypes. I will encourage people, if you have an idea, do it, put it out there, and it hasn't be like perfect. You can be scrappy, and by putting your idea out there in a tangible way, then you will start like getting engaged with people, and also you will start realizing what are the different groups of people that could make better your idea and your project. So I think that prototypes and stuff are a good way to do that.
Hey, Alice.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
Okay, I'm gonna hit all of them. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. How do I measure impact? Me personally, 3 ways. 1, through trash. The average American makes about 4.5 pounds of trash per person per day. So 4 years of not making trash is over 6,000 pounds of trash not sent to a landfill. So that's first, just like physical landfill impact. Through my company, I measure impact through selling a jar of detergent. In the United States, it's not legally required that cleaning product manufacturers disclose the ingredients of their products on product packaging. And so when you look at an ingredient list of laundry detergent, what's on the ingredient list doesn't at all have to reflect what's actually in the product. And cleaning product manufacturers can use words like fragrance or perfume to facade over 2,000 different ingredients and chemicals that could be fragrance or perfume. One of those, for instance, is formaldehyde, the same stuff that's used to embalm dead bodies. So for me, with my company, when one person makes a decision to not use Tide and use my detergent, that's for me like measurable impact and success. And then I guess the third way that I measure my impact is just through myself. So asking myself on a daily basis, what are my values, and am I doing everything in my day-to-day life that I can to align with those values? So am I happy? Do I feel good? Is what I'm doing having a positive environmental impact? And if I can answer those questions yes, then I'm successful. Tiny house movement. Dude, I live in Brooklyn in a tiny apartment. Like I can touch my walls with my hands. Like I am living in a tiny, I'm sure we're all here living in tiny houses. So totally support tiny house movement. I feel like people are like lizards. They say that lizards will grow to the size of the cage that you put them in. I feel like people and stuff are the same. The amount of stuff that we accumulate is directly correlated to the size of the space that we have to put stuff in. So I used to live in this apartment in Paris where like literally I couldn't stretch myself out, and I fit everything that I needed in my life into that apartment for 2 years, and it was like so fun. So really just the less space that we have, the less stuff that we accumulate, and you realize that you don't need that stuff to be happy. So super supportive of tiny house movement. Okay, next one, rural communities, right? That's what it is. Yeah.
How could they choose the get involved in SDG goals, especially when they do not have as many resources as we have to inspire them?
What do you mean by resources?
Like knowledgeable resources. We have all the workshop can attend it, and we can know how to just achieve these kind of goals. How could we to compare ourselves, like you, like just making that west, but how could like rural communities to get involved in SDG goals?
Honestly, like a goal of mine is to live like in a rural area. So I think it's really hard to want to try to change rural communities, maybe just like incentivizing cleaner technologies and cleaner modes of energy and cleaner transportation, but that's something that very much happens in cities. Rural lifestyles only have larger impacts than cities because we depend on fossil fuels. If everyone used solar energy and powered their cars and their homes on electric stoves, living a rural lifestyle wouldn't be as negative. So I think it's just helping to promote industries that are alleviating our dependence on fossil fuels. That's what I have to say about that. And then encouraging other people to live this lifestyle, I wouldn't. You can't convince anyone to do anything. You can only control yourself. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is like, you can't tell other people what to do, and if you try to, they're gonna think that you're like awful. Like if your parents tell you what to do, you're like, no, right? That's the first thing you do. Like you're directly opposed to being told what to do. So what I've learned is the only thing that I can do is live exactly in alignment with my values, be consistent with what I believe in, and talk about it. And by putting it out there, maybe someone will resonate with it, maybe they'll take it upon themselves to be interested and do that research, but I can't tell anyone what to do. I can only be a champion of my own values and be consistent. And on top of that, if someone's different than me, that's even more of an incentive to just be like, hey, person that's different from me, you want to come over to my house for dinner, and I'll share my life and you share yours, and we'll find a way to meet in the middle. It's so easy to isolate people that are different and want to change them into being like us, but really you can't, and it's frivolous, and it's actually quite rude. So to me, it's just living your lifestyle and inviting people that are different from you into your own life. Just show them how you live, not tell them how to live, and just be a champion of your values.
So this panel's on consumption and production. And I've been in the environmental world for way too long. It's the hardest one of all, and the easiest one of all at the same time. It's the hardest because it's, when you do forest conservation, it's, there's a forest. Water conservation, there's a water body. Climate change, we know, a matrix of ways to get there. Production and consumption is every one of us in this room and what we do. So it really is the everyday decisions. And we are trained from the time we're born, through media and those around us, to consume, and to consume. It is a huge part of our culture, and the media plays a huge part of it. The small actions that cause big differences is when you have people showing a different way. Whether it's living a zero waste, whether it's having a shared economy, whether it's getting out and doing something fantastic from sports into environment, whether it's in the fashion and environment, things we don't typically connect. Or it's a small, tiny house. The tiny house may not be for everyone, but it's a wonderful image we can get our head around. And we can imagine living in a tiny house. We can imagine what it takes to live in a tiny house. And we can adjust to it. So I think our job as a community of purpose is to keep being role models, to keep finding those examples and promoting those examples. And yours may not be a tiny house, yours may not be shared economy, but you'll find what yours is to get it across. Measurement is the thing. I run an NGO that does soap operas for a living. I have to think more about metrics and measurement than anyone can possibly believe. So if you want the 25 different ways to measure knowledge, attitudes, and practices, over a sandwich I'll go into great detail of the 1,000 ways you can do it. But a great story is worth 1,000 words, okay? That can sometimes be the most important part of measurement. We say story in, story out. Stories are what really people remember, much more than numbers.
When you asked about measuring your success or measuring your impact, that's key. Again, I was pointing to my wife again. Wife Masika and I, when we asked for funding for some of the projects that we're doing, whether it's the environmental football camps, recycle and run, physical activity, obstacle courses, or the Green Speaker Series, the corporate sponsors want to know, all right, well, measure it. Like how many people are you reaching? How many people are you touching? Is my money making a difference? That's almost every nonprofit out there. People who give to you don't want to see their money kind of go in some gray area, some gray space. They want to make sure that their impact is there. And for us, we've touched over 10,000 young people just through what we've done through our camps and our programs, and it's great. But we can't measure who they talk to and who they touch and who they whose lives they change and mindsets they change. And some of our kids, we come back and hear back from their parents saying, little Bobby has me now going and getting a recycling bin. He always, scolds me when I try to throw a plastic bottle in the trash, and we have to walk maybe a mile to find one of those blue containers, and I don't know why it's so important to him, but he says that he's saving the planet. So I guess I'll do it. And the same way that when I was growing up, the seatbelt crisis or all those commercials, people getting killed because they weren't buckling up, we had the messaging, or the messaging was towards youth. And so I was telling my mom, Mom, Daddy, you love me, put your seatbelt on. You gotta take care of yourself, so you're here for me. And with the whole smoking thing, and my mother used to smoke. She stopped smoking when me, my sister, my brother, my other sister, it's 4 of us, we all got on her, and we were on her. She used to sneak to the bathroom and smoke. She'd go outside and smoke. We were on her, Mom, you can't say you love us and be killing us in the car while you're smoking because it feels good, because you like to. You can't go outside and smoke for yourself either because you need to hear for us. So, going to the youth and having that impact shown there, we have the numbers, but the numbers are so much more because each one can teach one. And that person can teach another person. So I think that measurements actually is definitely important, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the beginning. And as far as the question of how to create small change, another thing we say in our nonprofit is practical lifestyle changes. Just practical lifestyle changes, because what she's doing is amazing for her. But we say in order to be sustainable, everyone's got to do that. Like, well, shoot, I can't do that. Start off small, meet people where they are, and they can eventually get to the point where we all need to be, which is where she's at. But if you don't meet them where they are, and if you don't allow them to do some practical lifestyle changes, kids who live in bad parts of Atlanta who are being introduced to the environment for the first time, they're like, I'm not going to do anything because it's not going to make a difference. Because there's not going to really be any real change at the end. But if every person does just a little bit, everyone just stops using maybe some plastic or turns off a light bulb or turns off the water or doesn't take as long of a shower, just these little small things, it'll make a difference. And it's all about, again, back to the value, back to them making a difference, back to them realizing that they're actually creating some measurable change. That's what's important.
Thank you. Melissa, can I give you the last word? And then I want to have plenty of time for everyone to talk and learn more about what people are doing and enjoy some of the booths. So Melissa.
Okay, I'll address one question because everyone has so well answered all the rest of them. The one about small actions you can do. So in terms of consumption, think about what you purchase, how you throw away things. If you need to throw away something, maybe not think about putting it in the garbage, the trash. I'm still using my UK Australian terms. But for example, when I was in London, I had a printer, I was going to throw it away, but then I felt a little guilty. I was thinking, I've heard that when you throw e-waste away, it's really damaging to the environment, it leaks into the soil. I'm going to use this free cycle service and see whether anyone wants to take my printer. And someone did. They went to my flat, I met them downstairs, I gave them the printer, and we had a small conversation. And this couple, they were starting a business, and this printer really helped them just get their office set up. So I was really amazed after this exchange, and I've started using the sharing economy more. So if you need to get rid of stuff, think about services like Uredal, Free Cycle, even Craigslist to give away things. If you need to buy stuff, if you need to buy something that you don't need to use very often, think about renting it maybe. I'm at an age where I'm invited to a lot of weddings. I'm also at an age where there's a lot of social media, so it's really obvious when you wear the same dress 10 times. So if I rent a wedding dress, I can wear a nice new dress, look Instagram, savvy, and not have to own so much stuff. So there's lots of creative ways where you can consume differently. And just think about what you throw away. Maybe someone else wants to use it or have it. So that's my kind of small action recommendation.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause for the panel. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone has too. And I really do want everyone to try and tell us something that they're going to do different. In terms of measurement and accountability, we want to hear, at least from everyone in the room here, something that you're going to be able to do different based on what you heard. I also want to thank Callie, sitting here to my right. She did an absolutely amazing job organizing this entire panel, all of the stuff that's going on here. It's been excellent. All of the organizations that have booths over there, we've got lots of cool stuff. We have a new comic that just came off the press that's being launched simultaneously at COP22 in Marrakesh, all about climate change and the effects on the environment. The U.S. Fund for UNICEF, all of the student volunteers that we had from Occidental, the Newsomatic student reporters that are in the room. We're looking forward to reading your story. And all of you, thank you so much for coming, and please adjourn to the other side. Thank you.